FIGU Special Bulletin No. 53. Islamistic terrorists do not represent Islam, just as terrorists of other faiths do not represent the other religions. As a human being, born Edward Albert Meyer, named Billy, Bim, and Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah and so forth, I had certainly, already from childhood, gained a good insight into Christianity as well as into Islam and into the other religions as well as into many of their sects, whereby I have, however, assumed and maintained a completely neutral position over my entire life, for myself and my thoughts, feelings and views, as well as opinions. Fundamentally, according to Islam, I am a religious non-believer and, from the perspective of Christianity, a heretic and atheist, or, from a different and sectarian perspective, one who is lost and a candidate for hell and so forth, because I distance myself from all religious and sectarian belief. As a result, I have not succumbed to the God delusion, which is hammered in an indoctrinating manner into the believers, through the false teachings of religions and all their sects. For these above-mentioned reasons I am also able, in a neutral way, to correctly judge things which are actually, or seemingly, associated with belief, religion and sectarianism. This is the case, for example, in regard to Islamistic terrorism, whereby this Islamism has no relationship whatsoever with actual Islam. It is based, instead, on a wrongly steered and completely degenerated fanaticism. Unfortunately, it is the case that, wherever terrorist acts occur, these are immediately associated with Islam, as they also are with other religions, however, and indeed, depending on which religion the terrorists belong to in each instance. In the present time it is primarily Islam which is the target of abusive insults from people. This is exactly what occurs when terrorist acts are committed by fanatical Islamists. Terrorist Islamists have, however, nothing to do with Islam in the way that they represent it, because truly they are degenerated religious fanatics, who interpret the Quran and Islam which results from it, according to their own criminal judgment, in their own fanatical favor, in order to be able to spread boundless murder, killing, death and destruction. As a result of this wrongdoing by the fanatical Islamistic terrorists who have succumbed to delusion, their crimes are only too quickly and too willingly brought into association with Islam. On one hand, however, this has nothing at all to do with it, and on the other hand, the fanatical, Islamistic terrorists are not genuine Muslims, but are rather only shabby creatures who quite intentionally use Islam as a pretext for their degenerations of their murderous and criminal behavior. In this way Islam, again and again, gets into the headlines of the public media as a result of new terrorist atrocities and crimes, which naturally is also the case with all other religions when terrorist degenerations and crimes are committed in their name. At present, however, it is Islam which, because of the fanatical Islamistic believers and through one who succumbed to degenerated religious delusion, is misused and is made the horror of the world. And this is not only within the ranks of the Christians and Hindus, the Jews, Buddhists and those of other faiths, but it is also within the ranks of Muslims. Fundamentally, all fanatical actions which are driven by delusional belief, and other terrorist actions, are profoundly low and should be the most sharply condemned, and indeed it makes no difference whether they are determined by degenerated fanatical Islamism or if they lead back to fanatical degenerations of those imprisoned by other religious faiths. However, in the current time it is the Islamistic terrorists, who are not representatives of Islam and are not faithful Muslims, who toss the entirety of Islam, and, with it, well over 1 billion Muslims, into the abyss of hatred from Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists and from many of other faiths. Neither the ringleaders of the Islamistic terrorists, nor those who sign up with them and learn terror, nor those who have already been trained as Islamistic terrorists can claim that they are representatives of Islam. Truly, they are serious criminals and can in no way be called Muslims, because, in their fanaticism, they are degenerates and miserable creatures and ill-disposed ones who murder and destroy out of cowardice, and bring the genuine Islamic believers into disrepute all over the world and set the whole world hatefully against them. Islam, now just 1,431 years old, has basically come forth from the old teaching of the real prophets, therefore also from the teaching as was brought by Emmanuel, who is also quoted in the Quran as a prophet. Terroristic Islamism has, however, not come from this teaching from the old prophets and thereby also not from the religious book, the Quran. Instead it has come from a hate-bound delusion of those who incite terror against all those who do not follow, implement and fully live the verses of the Surah of the Quran conservatively, fundamentally and fanatically in a completely wrong and erroneous manner. This does not mean in the actual Islamic way, but rather according to the erroneous and dim-witted Islamism, which truly has nothing to do with Islam and the teachings of the Quran, because Islamism follows terroristic, pathologically insane and fanatical false teachings which find no likeness at all in either the Islamic religious book nor in other teaching texts which result from it. Islamistic terrorism is an unparalleled degeneration existing outside the teachings of the Quran and of Islam. Consequently, it may not be taken as a measure for judging the image of Islam and of the faithful Muslims. But if that is done, then that corresponds to a mistake, which only generates evil and hate, whereby the wheel of hate turns ever further and all terror actions occurring all over the world are automatically and directly associated with Islam and with Muslims in general. And it also happens when terrorist actions are caused in a different way and are carried out by Christians, Hindus or Jews, and so forth. Therefore, just in this regard alone, a differentiation must already be made, and it must be clear that religious and sectarian terrorism has nothing to do with the actual religion, but rather is based on degenerations which come forth from pathologically insane, exaggerated, conservative, fundamentalist and fanatical, as well as delusional, imaginations. Therefore it is necessary to recognize terrorism in the actuality of its origins, because only in this way can it be effectively tackled in order to put an end to it. But precisely that is not done, because basically Islam and Muslims are immediately made generally responsible when some kind of terror actions occur somewhere. Truly, however, terror is not the product of Islam or another religion, rather it is the evil and criminal fruit of hate-filled and fanatical humans, who, without consideration and conscience, also make others, who are misled by them, instrumental for their terroristic purposes. Terror actions, which prove to have a form defined by Islamism, have a quite especially and extremely unpleasant, as well as malicious, effect worldwide on coexistence among Christians, Jews and Muslims, and promote hate against the Islamic believers, and, indeed, although they detest and reject terrorism, they want to live in peace, freedom, harmony and love, as do all other rational human beings of all peoples and religions. Consequently, for them, terror actions are completely senseless, inappropriate and criminal, as well as despising of human beings and life. In contrast to that, those of other faiths, primarily an enormous number of Christians and Jews, believe their completely wrong, imagined and often delusion-imprinted opinions to be confirmed in regard to Islam and Muslims as a result of the criminal, Islamistic, terror actions. And then, even when criminal terror actions are carried out by Christians or Jews, and so forth, the entire thing is thoughtlessly and hatefully attributed, unjustifiably, to Muslims and Islam. In this regard, absolutely no distinction is made, but rather everything is simply mocked up with the same hate-drenched, filthy rag, and is thrown into the same pot of hate. Wrong information and misunderstanding in regard to Islam and its believers cloud the senses of reason and understanding of primarily the Christians and Jews and all their manifold sects. Thereby it is forgotten that, in reality, only small terrorist groups are behind all acts of murder and destruction, in which misled, fanatical, hate-filled and profoundly low, cowardly, degenerated human beings are hidden, who commit their crimes in the name of an imaginary God. In this way, wrong ways of viewing it and misunderstandings emerge, as a result of which all terror actions are condemned as belonging to Islam. In the case of the Islamistic terrorists, murder and destruction is carried out in the name of Allah, as well as in the name of the Sharia, which is basically wrongly interpreted by the terrorists and is, so to speak, explained as